Attachment. So what is it? Why is it important? And what's a magnet got to do with it? What is that? What does a magnet have to do with attachment? Well, this magnet might represent secure attachment. This is what everybody hopes for, is a nice secure attachment. I have a securely attached salmon eggs. Oh, it's a bait lid. That's exciting. A really nice chunk of rock. Another fish hook. Another piece of metal. Another fish hook. And lots of rocks. First off, there's secure attachment, and that is where people have a pretty good view of themselves. They had pretty responsive parents and a supportive environment. They're usually the kind that are flexible and open and warm, and they don't have problems sharing their emotions with others in a positive way. On the other hand, a magnet might also represent anxious attachment, where someone is attached enough to be what someone else might determine to be clingy. They want to be in, but they're too busy looking for rejection and abandonment. It doesn't seem to be very anxious. The anxious, preoccupied attachment style, or sometimes just called anxious attachment style, those are the people that are high on the anxiety scale, and they tend to have a negative view of themselves, and they might view themselves as being unworthy of love because they might have grown up in a home that was a little less supportive than someone with a secure attachment. These people tend to want intimacy and approval, but then they fear rejection and abandonment, so they're like torn between this I want it but I'm afraid of it kind of a thing. Sometimes that's as a result of a parent or whoever, a caregiver, who was a little inconsistent with their emotional availability, so that they were there sometimes and then sometimes they weren't there. So sometimes people with anxious attachment styles have this hypervigilance, so they're always watching for a change in the dynamics of relationships where they might think that they might get abandoned or rejected. They tend to be the kind of people that seek constant assurance and approval and attention from others, and they can come across as being dependent or clingy. There's a thing for kids, little kids especially, that's called a constancy. Where if they leave the room, they're not too sure if when they come back in the room, whatever it was they left is still there. So people with this anxious attachment style sometimes have a problem with this sense of constancy. Like, okay, I'm going to leave and go to work and come home, and yeah, my husband or my wife or my whoever is still going to be there. They can be hypersensitive to someone else's anger. Then they take it on themselves like, oh, well, they're pulling back from me, or they're going to abandon me, and so they react with fear or anger, or this, they just want this validation all the time. They tend to struggle a little bit more with dependency. Like, this is where codependent behavior kind of comes in, where you kind of sacrifice your own needs for the needs of others, and you kind of lose yourself. So you don't really have a life, or you're too busy living your life, and then 3 other people's lives, or whoever. So it tends to take up a lot of energy, mental energy, physical energy, and it wears you out. And someone with avoidant attachment might have trouble connecting fully. They're in it, but not really as much as they might like to be, because there's something in the way keeping them from being fully attached in a healthy way, securely attached. Magnetic rocks. And then there's people that are high on the avoidance side of the scale, and they're the ones that generally view people, have negative views of others like they don't trust them and everything is a conspiracy theory, or that person can't be trusted, or for whatever reason, even though they have no proof that that person can't be trusted. So you have the anxious attachment, which is a negative view of yourself, and the avoidant attachment, which is a negative view of someone else, or others, not someone else specifically, but others. Sometimes they don't remember very much of their childhood, or they're just not really comfortable talking about it. Normalizing, intellectualizing, and rationalizing painful events are pretty much the coping mechanism of choice. These kind of kids develop this kind of attachment style when their caregivers are just not responsive to their needs, or they reject their needs. They're not usually comfortable with openness, emotional openness, and they deny the need for intimacy. They place a high value on independence and autonomy. So in both of these kind of attachment styles, your pain is just buried. You can't really don't know how to deal with it, because there's a lot of fear in both of these kind of attachment styles, just fear directed in a different area. This is more like disorganized attachment, where they want attachment, but at the same time, they keep everything bottled up inside. Hopefully what's inside is better than that garbage bag somebody stuffed in there. This old rusty nail is attached, and this little piece of, looks like a bucket or something, is attached. So the other one is disorganized attachment, and this is usually developed in childhood when children are exposed to long-term abuse and neglect, and they see caregivers as being a source of pain and hurt. So if your attachment style is disorganized, you might relate to others in some kind of chaotic and unpredictable way, or maybe you perpetuate some kind of abusive cycle. It's unfortunately getting pretty common for that. So, but if you have one of these attachment styles that doesn't suit you very well, or doesn't work very well in your life, and you're thinking, yeah, I kind of want a relationship, but I'm afraid of one, or I don't need a relationship, I just want to be by myself, but I really kind of do want some connection. Or, if you see everybody, you don't trust anybody, everybody's out with an ulterior motive, or you're too busy living somebody else's life when you have your own life to live because you're so dependent in some way, or anything that sounded familiar in there. As you reach adulthood and you try to form relationships, you get two people with two different attachment styles, or even the same attachment style in a relationship, and neither one of them is a healthy attachment style. Usually problems come up. So therapy, couples therapy, children's therapy, things like that will help to alleviate some of those symptoms, to help you get back on a better track, to have a better positive view of yourself, like in the secure attachment, which was the first one I mentioned. Attachment styles develop in childhood, but they can be modified through therapy and active participation in that as an adult. So don't give up. There is hope. And if you need any help, make sure that you give your doctor a call, or you look for a therapist, and we'll see what we can do to help you. Make sure that if you do find a therapist, that you test for a good fit, because not every therapist is a good fit for every client. So make sure that when you find one, make sure that it feels right. And if it doesn't, find a different one. And the therapist will not be offended. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So find somebody that you can work with, and then work on those attachment styles. So maybe you can have healthier relationships with others. And I'll talk to you later, so take it easy. I'll see you later.